So, for those of you that are listening and that don't know, what exactly is Medics After Dark? Like, you kind of touched a little bit on why you started it. What exactly is Medics After Dark?
Yeah, so it is a community, and we'll call it that for now, of providers, nurses, flight medics, medics, EMTs, EMT, BA, whatever it is in your state, firefighters. We have students in there, EMT students, paramedic students, things like that, and we just wanted to provide a place where we can be humans and be ourselves.
Welcome to Last Known Vitals. My name is John Smith, and today I'm sitting down with Justin Purchase. Justin is a veteran of the United States Army and has been in healthcare for over 15 years. He's currently a paramedic with his critical care endorsement. He's also the creator of the Discord Medics After Dark. Justin, thanks for being here with me today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
So I wanted to get started right off the bat. You come from a military background. You were in healthcare for 15 years, and before that, you were in the military. I want you to talk to me a little bit about that. What is HIMARS or HEM? Like, how do I say that?
It's HIMARS,
Okay.
and it stands for High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. And the best way I can describe that to people is if you followed anything about the Russian-Ukrainian war, it's the artillery pieces that we sent to Ukraine that shot the rockets long range and were fighting the Russians with. So basically, essentially, it's a rocket system on a truck. It carries 6 rockets, and we can shoot it quite far. Well out of the range of any enemy. I was in at the time that they were testing the new guided munitions, so we did some work with Lockheed Martin, things like that there. And best job I ever had. I think it was so fun to shoot that thing. And we sit in the cab when that thing fires off, you rock back and forth and big loud noises. And had a lot of good time doing it.
There's that adrenaline rush right off the bat. It
Yeah,
makes sense
yeah.
why you went to be a paramedic.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool thing to shoot. When people think about artillery, they think about the cannon cockers that are throwing rounds down range from the cannons, and they don't always think about us guys that can shoot a lot further than those cannons can, and take out a whole lot more targets than they can at one time. So
That's cool, man. That's cool.
yeah,
I would love to just be like a fly on the wall during a range day and just watch you guys just have fun and then compare, like, hey, check out what we can do. And then you have the other guys doing their thing. And that would just
yeah,
be a fun little battle to witness.
yeah. We were. Oh shoot, what was it? I don't remember what year
And
it
I
was,
mean, like
but
a friendly gesture of like
yeah, of
the
course, of
people, the
course.
cannon coggers, the people you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. The gun bunnies, we call them that too, I guess. But
Boy,
I
here we go.
remember one night we were out at Yakima Training Center up in Washington State, on the east side of the state, and it's pitch dark outside, and kind of everybody was waiting, and we started firing those things off, and it just lit the whole sky up. It was pretty neat to see all 6 launchers all fire off at the same time, just pitch black, can't see nothing, and the whole sky lights up. It's pretty cool to watch.
That would be a sight to see for sure. I
Yeah.
would definitely like to see that. So before you got into being a medic, you were in that role right there. Tell me a little bit about your transition out of the army because you came out with a lot of leadership skills and things like that. You said that, you had led some guys on different missions and things to that effect. So you transitioned out of the army into medicine. How did you go from, something that's totally different and then find yourself being a paramedic?
Well, probably like any other soldier that gets out, that's kind of on we call it the combat arms side of the army, and those are, the army is very intricate. It's got a lot of jobs, but it's generally separated into the support side and the combat arms side. And the combat arms side would be infantry, artillery, tankers. Those guys that are um, theoretically in the fight. I guess the last wars kind of had everybody in the fight, but coming out in those jobs really don't have a lot of skills other than leadership skills, and there's some critical thinking, things like that, but I wasn't an aircraft mechanic, and I wasn't a medic, and I wasn't these jobs that translate out into the civilian world. So it was kind of tough for me, and I didn't really know where I was going to be, what I was going to do. Coming back off of a hard deployment and then getting out, you just feel really lost. So I kind of had a rough transition coming out because I just didn't know what I was going to do. I was searching for the brotherhood. and I was like, I don't really know where to get that. So I kind of did everything, car selling, car sales. I did retail. I did all this kind of stuff. I finally landed in law enforcement for about 7 years. And I enjoyed that job. It just wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I got done kind of right about when the George Floyd stuff happened is when I started to kind of lose my spark for law enforcement. Um, at that time, I was also going through paramedic school, and I just told myself I was going to make my choice when I graduated medic school, and so I did. I just enjoyed paramedicine. It sounds super cliche, and I tell people this all the time, and it's almost, I don't want to say embarrassing, but I'm like, it's super cliche, but I had enough of hurting people and fighting and this and that, so I want to put my hands on somebody and help them, and that's ultimately why I've gotten into medicine and stayed in medicine because I really enjoyed that part of my life now.
Yeah, and I imagine being a law enforcement officer, then now it's changing, and it's got to be a very difficult job to do. And my hat goes off to anybody in law enforcement. It's certainly a job that I wouldn't want to have to do every day. So, I understand, at least enough to say while you may have made that change, I did work on the streets a lot as a paramedic, and I see what those guys and girls have to deal with, and it's a lot as well. And but I think it's a really powerful message. I mean, yeah, it may sound cliche, but I think it's powerful that you came from this military, you went to the law enforcement, which unfortunately is a lot more hands-on and
Mhm,
generally not in a helping way, the way that we would like to think, and then transition into the medical side and really helping on using that term directly. I think that's wonderful, man. That's really powerful of you to use that terminology and the way you said that. So don't feel like it's cliche. I really like that.
I actually took my, I don't know what you want to call it, inspiration, I guess, from one of our medics in combat, and I hold him very highly in my heart. Probably haven't talked to him in years, but and he probably doesn't know that I still hold him that highly. But um, his purpose in life was to be our medic, right? And we were kind of out in austere environments, and his job was to keep us on patrol, and that's what he did. And whatever it took, and it's a bunch of guys out on patrol, and fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, the guys that were doing that stuff, the army treated us like athletes in recovery and in training and things like that, which was nice, but that comes with injuries, comes with sore bodies, it comes with all that kind of stuff. And this medic we have, and I won't put his name out there, but this medic we had, I'll never forget. Like, we came back off a particularly tough patrol, and it was the terrain that was tough, not necessarily the fighting or anything like that. It was just the terrain that was tough. And man, my back was on fire. I mean, probably some of the worst back spasms I've ever had in my life, this and that. And literally, this grown man just was like, all right, lay down. And he was massaging the muscles in my back because it was his job to get me back out on patrol the next day. So now I carry that into my career now, and there's nothing I won't do for a patient. If that means sit there, and I have definitely rubbed quad muscles out on a guy that's, you know, having heat related issues, and that was the best thing that he needed. He just needed get the cramp out of his quads or his calves or something like that. I've definitely done that, and, held hands on the way to the hospital, whatever. And it just doesn't, it's not awkward to me to do that because my job is to help them. And so, I keep that inspiration close to my heart from that medic, where if he was willing to do that for a bunch of just dirty, grungy grunts to keep them on patrol, then why can't I do that? So.
Yeah, what a cool experience to be able to carry over from one life to another, so to speak. I think that's really, really amazing, to have that experience and understand that being a paramedic really does, encompass all emergencies, whether it be a major one or the most minor one. Either
Mhm.
way, somebody else is having a bad day, and taking that extra step, to hold that hand, things like that, that really is gonna, separate what makes a good medic from just, someone that's showing up to do the job. So again, that's really cool, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is education. And I think we come from a similar standpoint on education in many different ways. And I think the whole culture of the way it was done, back earlier on when we were probably both becoming medics, things like that. I got my medic in 2012. It was like the eat your young and all that stuff. And for me, I got to be honest, I didn't really truly experienced that. I had a lot of great mentors and I had a lot of people that really were rooting for me and in my corner to help me. And I found that that's exactly who I kind of became as now a seasoned medic and even a nurse now. I really enjoy educating. I like teaching people the knowledge that's been given to me. And you talk really highly on that. So what's one of the things that you found to be one of like the turning points from that toxic culture that everybody kind of knows as EMS to where we're really are now and heading more towards in the future?
That is a great question, and I also, I think, at the beginning of my career was very sheltered, as far as the culture goes, and that is no fault of anybody. I did my EMT course over in Afghanistan because I was bored. I didn't. I was bored, and they offered it, so I did it. And the good thing about
That's awesome.
that, good and bad, whatever you want to call it, but the good thing is that my clinical rotations were not what normal people experience. I did my hospital clinicals in a combat surgical hospital, and then my ride time was on a Black Hawk for EMT. So that was kind of neat. And so I already had that camaraderie, and I already had that. The instructors were invested in us learning how to do this stuff. And then I got back to the United States, and I started to kind of dip my toe into the. I always use the term industry because it is what it is. It's an industry, right?
Yeah.
So I started to dip my toe in the industry, and I was like, holy cow, this is not what I experienced. This is not the supportive, um, brotherhood type stuff that I was used to with doing that with military guys. So I was a little sheltered, and then I was shell shocked when I came back here and I experienced that, and I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be my career. I got to figure out how to wade through this mud and get through these issues. So as far as the turning point goes, I don't know if we've got there yet, to be honest with you. Um, there is a shift in culture coming, and it's taking guys like us to do that, and it's been great. And I think our generation of medics is not going to be the one to change it. It's going to be the one following us. So if we can lead the next generation into that culture, I think um, that's going to be where we go. And the change, I think, comes from where it used to be eat your young, I've earned mine, so you can earn yours. I don't need to help you out, things like that. To now it's like, man, we really need you because I'm working too much freaking overtime and we're too short staffed and this and that. Like, so when I talk to students and I tell them about the industry, this and that, I always lead off with that. I'm like, in the end, I need you on the road because I'm exhausted. And I think my partners are exhausted, and everybody in this whole industry is exhausted. So we need you to be successful, and that helps drive me in my teaching and training with people. It's not a teaching moment if I'm going to make you look dumb, because that's never the goal, or at least my goal anymore. Certainly, there still are instructors out there that do that, and that's why I feel like our generation of people is not going to change that. That's too little, too late for us. It's the next generation that's going to, but it takes those of us that are in this current generation to lead that charge. But that's what it is for me. Like, I need you next to me, and I need you to be good at it because I'm exhausted.
Yeah, and as a seasoned medic, as people would call us, I think we are part of the current culture of change, though. I think it's up to us, like as you were just saying, to really change that I'm going to eat your young type of mentality. And like, you should know it. I went through it, all this stuff. No, like, I had a doctor come into a lecture once and he said to us, I want you guys to understand and learn this information because it may be you one day taking care of my family member and all bullshit aside, like I actually responded to this gentleman's house, this doctor's house, and took care of his wife one day. And that was such a powerful moment. And I was like, oh my God. And that really stuck with me when it comes to wanting to teach and give off this knowledge and things like that. And I think you're right with, it's gonna just take some time to really let that completely fade. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to not really experience a whole lot of that. Like there were a few people that are just kind of like assholes, and that's fine.
Right.
And even they have some, really good insight on stuff, and sometimes you have to look past that
Mhm.
wall that they put up for whatever reason. They're miserable. That's fine, but you can still pull a little of information from them. But there are people that just have no interest in teaching and shedding that knowledge, and whatever. Like there's plenty of people nowadays, I think, that are really willing to teach and give that knowledge and share it with you. So if you're out there and you're listening, and you're new, find those right people. Like they're out there, so don't settle for someone who's just a jerk to you and treats you poorly.
So I always use the kind of example of where in the old school days it was like you got to memorize everything. If you don't have ACLS memorized, you're not a good medic. If you don't have PALS memorized, you're not a good medic. And I'm very, very against that ideology. Not that we don't need to have a good understanding to where we can recall that type of stuff, because that's important. But the memorization mentality, and if you don't, you're not a good person or you're not a good provider, that, like, I'm very against that mentality. And here's why: because I've had real life experiences with that type of thing going very badly. In the military, we use what's called a 9-line medevac to get helicopters to us if somebody is hurt, dying, whatever. And it's 9 lines. Here's where we're at. Here's how many patients. Here's what type of patients. Here's the enemy on scene. Here's what we're going to mark with, all these things. And the military is very much like grinded into you got to memorize this, because when the fire's coming in, you don't know what you're going to do. And it's like, that's correct. And so what I did, instead of totally memorizing that, I wrote it on my window with a grease pencil. If I was on patrol, I wrote it on the window. So then I can just physically look over and refer to that. And I bring that over into this career. And I always use the pediatrics example. There's so much to pediatrics, and each, whatever, 8 different types of age groups in just the pediatric space, right? How in the hell am I going to memorize all of that? I'm just not. And so taking your protocols in and looking and having those resources in your pocket or on your person. When we were growing up in the system, it was embarrassing to do that. Now, like, I encourage people to do that. Have those references right there, because when you're dealing with somebody's child, you want to get it right the first time. And you don't want to be guessing at it. You don't want to be like, well, I think I remember this protocol, that protocol. So memorization is not the best answer. Having your resources and having your protocols and not being embarrassed to use them in front of God and everybody is the answer in my book.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that, I actually watched one of your videos and you kind of talked about when that sympathetic drive kicks in and that adrenaline dump happens, like there's going to be things that you're going to forget. So taking that moment to just write it down or use your resources is huge. We used to take like a little note card out and we would write down like the pediatric dosages and we'd put it in our pocket. Cause if you get like a 6-year-old or something like that, you can kind of look at your reference range, write down what's normal for that age group. And it's probably gonna be pretty accurate and have it just right there. And if you need it, it's there. If you don't, you throw it away at the end of the call. Like it was brilliant, and I learned that from working with just seasoned people. They're like, here, do me a favor, write this stuff down. And I was like, oh, I see what we're doing here. Hell
Well,
yeah.
and you
So
think about it, like the professional, like the hospital professionals. What's the first thing you guys do when a pediatric comes in? You print off their weight-based dosage sheet and put it next to them. So why is it
exactly.
so unacceptable in our world to do that? And that's a question I've asked myself, and I just have like, it's not unacceptable for us to do that. And so, yeah, that's how I look at it. Like, I don't need to memorize that stuff, because I'm gonna use my references and get it right the first time on somebody's child.
Right. And I had a humbling moment. Actually, watching your video made me think back to my own little moment. And I was a younger paramedic again. You know how we all come out thinking we're God's gift and all this other shit. But like I remember looking at this hospital doctor up on the floor and he had pulled out ACLS and he was going through it. And I remember just being this ignorant little shit and just being like, man, this doctor has to look at that. Like, that's kind of crazy. Duh, 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 duh. And just in my own mind, like kind of running my mouth and like, oh man, just looking back, I was like, buddy, you don't know shit.
Right, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and it's really fun to look back as someone who has some real experience now and just to be like, wow, man, like that was somebody who said, hey, we have an acute emergency. Let me pull out my reference because I don't do this every single day and let me get it right the first time, just like you said. So I wrote that down. I said, I got to bring this up because it was a humbling moment. It was cool to reminisce on.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right. Like, don't memorize. Don't memorize what you can reference. I think Einstein said that. And of course, there are things that you will memorize over time. Certain dosages will come to our mind and be just muscle memory, and that's cool, But like, it's okay to look stuff up. Like
Yeah.
that's the first thing our physicians and the mid levels and all that stuff. They're constantly looking things up because how can you be expected to memorize such a vast majority of information and not make a mistake?
Do
So
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this conversation we could probably deep dive for hours, but
absolutely.
one of the culture shifts that I've seen recently is the calling in for medical control. You used to get
Yes.
kind of pushback from the physicians and this and that, like, why are you calling us when you have protocols? I'm like, well, do you call the cardiologist when you have a STEMI patient? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, then why would I not call my ER doctor? Or do you take care, do you have a mobile cath lab in your pocket? This and that. So it's kind of been a culture shift, and it's kind of taken us to help train our doctors, be like, hey, we're not calling because we're dumb. We're calling
Mhm.
because we need the experts' help, and framing it that way to them is that little ego stroke, and that helps. And especially when we're calling with psych patients and behavioral health emergencies, and you can hear them rolling their eyes on the on the phone, and the doctor probably needs more Versed than the patient does because he's rolling his eyes so hard, and it's like, it's not because we're dumb, it's because we need help. And it's no different than you calling ortho guys or you calling the vascular guys or this and that in the ER. And having worked in the ER, that's how I was able to put that piece together and say, in the field, those are our experts. That is our phone call, to make, and that's why we do it. So, before it was like, yeah, call medical control, this and that, but it was kind of frowned upon, because I'm a paramedic and I have protocols. So that culture shift has been kind of neat to watch over the last couple of years too.
I couldn't agree more with you, and I'm really glad you brought that up because I encourage that so frequently to the different EMS agencies that come in. I'm like, hey, if you don't know, you have this like magical phone number you can call and speak to the physician that's going to be receiving this patient. And it's all part of being one team. And that's something we're going to talk about here in just a moment, of being part of a bigger team. And especially as a paramedic, you are one component to this big team. And is the sooner we can get that message across, I think it's really going to help, allow our industry to grow. And there's just one little thing I wanted to talk about because you had made a video upon it, about it, excuse me, and it had to do with like the skilled nursing facilities and the nurses there and kind of going there as a medic. And once again, well, doing some homework here for this podcast, I came across some of your videos that really made me think back. And I've talked about this a few times now myself. So, it really was like, oh, Justin's right on it. He knows exactly what I'm talking about here. It's when we show up to those nursing homes and they're having an acute emergency and we show up and the nurse is there and they're trying to give us a report, they're trying to give us any information they have, and again, being part of a bigger team, when we show up and we kind of have this attitude of like, how can you not know all the medications, how do you not know all these allergies and the past medical history, etc., while managing this acute emergency and 30 other patients at once. I think that's a huge thing that needs to be addressed. And I personally have gotten humbled many a times, and I have a whole new approach towards it now, especially being an RN.
I do
What would
too.
you say to those younger medics that kind of come out and have these expectations from whether it be off of, a skilled nursing facility or a clinic, a doctor's office, where this emergency situation is not their everyday world? Like, what would you tell them and how to kind of reframe their way of approaching that?
Yeah, I um have made some videos, and I actually have a couple planned about this topic specifically because I had to change my own mindset about this. Because sure, we expect a nurse, an RN in a skilled nursing facility to have all the answers, and they just don't. And especially with now the way their industry is going, there's so many times that you walk into a building and you hear I'm an agency nurse, and I had to look that up. I was like, what the hell is an agency nurse? And it's like this staffing agency that says this building is short on nurses, go there. They may not have ever met these people. They may
Yep.
not have ever, and anybody that's had more than one patient knows that you don't have time to sit and go through everybody's chart and, look at this. There's good and bad to that. And I'll tell a quick side story. I want to call that I just recently went on that was not a good look for the nurse. And then I'll kind of answer your question because I do have a very direct answer to that. But the call I went on, very long story short, we went on a call for hypotension and, male patient hypotension. We get there and the nurse is nowhere to be found. They send the tech or whatever they call them in there. And she was like, I don't know what's going on. I just got told he was getting sent to the ER and here I am. I'm like, okay, great. Can you find the nurse that called us? That'd be wonderful. Just so we can have some kind of background. Well, the nurse comes in, she says, well, he was hypotensive and I've taken manual blood pressures. We haven't been able to get him his blood pressure to raise. And I was like, okay, great. Is there anything that's happened today? Is he fallen? Is he, just kind of going through my thing. Oh no, he was hypotensive earlier. And then, after he received his meds, he got more hypotensive. So I said, okay, great. And she hands me the paperwork and I start looking and I'm like, did he receive all of his meds? And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She was like, yes, he did. And I was like, so he received, with the blood pressure that you charted of 70 over 50, whatever it was, you charted that and then gave him a 50 milligram extended release metoprolol. I was like, okay, this is our problem. And she's like, it was the shift before me. I was like, okay, great. We just need to go. Like, this could possibly kill this man, so there's that side of things. And she's an agency nurse. She didn't know. And the shift before her didn't do their job correctly, things like that. And now she's having to deal with that. So my answer directly to all of this is we have to stop expecting that. Be a paramedic. Our whole job in life is to go to an unknown and investigate with no information. You think about a 911 call you go on, you don't have a nurse standing there saying this is his history, this is his medications, this is all that. We have to investigate that on our own. So I had to shift that in my own mind that I don't need to have that expectation walking into that door. And it's not because of lack of their ability. And whether it is or not is not that important. But I'm still a
Right.
paramedic. I still gotta investigate. I talk to the patient. I figure out what's going on, and just do my job as a paramedic. How many times have we gone on an unconscious patient and figured out what's going on with them because we investigated? They didn't give us any information whatsoever. So changing my own mindset about that has been really helpful for me.
I think that's definitely good advice, kind of approach it with the idea of you have to investigate no matter what, whether that be go through the paperwork or talk to the patient, crazy as that sounds.
Crazy.
It is our job to be an investigator as well as a patient care provider in the big picture. And one thing I know about you is that you actually transitioned from the street into the emergency room. And so I did the same thing many years ago. And in my hospital, we were kind of the glorified techs, if you will. And I just call it what it is. It's okay. It's not a knock. But like we didn't take patient care assignments. So I was able to do all my paramedic stuff. We weren't allowed to intubate. That was one skill, if you will, that I wasn't allowed to do. And like whatever, airways are gross, you know. No, I do wish we could have tubed people. I definitely miss it. Let me be the first to say it. So, but and then it actually expanded into taking a 4 patient assignment. So it really that was when my eyes really opened up and to a whole new world of what kind of the nursing role is and what that's being like. So I want you to talk to me a little bit about your experience going from the street into the hospital and how has that been for you?
It was, first of all, nerve-wracking because I went from the street to a level 1 trauma center. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know anything about the hospital. I'm not great at lab values. I'm not great at this. I'm not great at that. So all these things that nurses did, and they stuck us in there. And um, I wasn't required to take a 4 patient load. The nice thing about how they did with the paramedics where I worked at is they allowed us to be super flexible. So wherever the problem was at an ER, that's where we went.
And that
Um,
was the same thing for us, and
yeah.
that's why I say kinda glorified tech, if you will, a paramedic in the ER, and I say that with all the love in
Yeah,
the world, of course.
absolutely.
Just like, how do you describe the role, right? So,
Yeah, I was able to
yeah.
take patients if needed. Like if,
Yep,
if they were short staffed, I was able to take patients and I did everything the nurses could do except for the uh anticoagulants and, things like that. There was very little that I couldn't do. And then
right.
as the physicians and the nurses started trusting me, there was a lot more that I just didn't have to ask to do. I just did it because they knew when Justin showed up that, we were gonna be okay. And then our paramedics, when the trauma rooms activated, that was our role, is to be there
Yep,
on the trauma table. A lot
absolutely.
of triage and a lot of people say what you want about triage, but I actually liked it because it's fast paced. You go, you give the meds, you take the blood, you go, you do that stuff. And then, we got pulled out of triage when a sick patient came in or somebody tubed or the helicopters were coming, things like that. So I had a pretty good experience. It was also humbling. As a paramedic, you are taught from day one that you're in charge, you're the big man on campus, your big brain's got to solve the problem, this and that. And then you go into a hospital and you got to realize you're not the smartest guy in the room anymore, and
It's such a good feeling
it,
sometimes though,
it
you
is
know?
because there was a whole lot less pressure on me, but I was like, man, there's so much to this that I don't know.
Yes.
And that was such a great experience and turning point in my career to the point now where I recommend every single paramedic go spend time in an ER,
Yep.
part-time PRN, whatever, because there's just so much valuable stuff that you're going to learn there. I don't get a chance on the field to look at X-rays and learn how to read X-rays. I don't get a chance to look at CT scans and look and really see what these problems look like and what they're doing to the body, and or see MRIs and ask questions to the guys that are experts. I have a radiologist sitting next to me. I'm like, hey, how do you know that this person has a brain bleed or something like that? And they're like, oh, it's right there. And I'm like, all right, I didn't know that. I'm a paramedic. Or this is what cholecystitis looks like, or this is what, these things that I was able to visually see and put the pieces together. And then now that I'm transitioned back out on the road, I have a much broader picture of what's going on as far as the aftercare, the hospital's care, and then just, even something as stupid, simple as anatomy and physiology. I looked at it on CT scan, and I can understand how pressure in the brain is creating more problems and things like that because I've seen it at a different level. So I definitely recommend every paramedic go do some time in a hospital.
I agree fully with that. And a lot of the people that come in, I'm like, hey, just come hang out for a bit. Like when you go through medic school, you're in the ER, you do plenty of clinical time there, sure, but
It's not
you're
the
there
same.
for skills. You're
Yeah,
what's that?
it's not the same. Yeah,
No, no, not at all. You're really there for skills. But when you're part of the team and you're looking at the lab values, you're looking at the follow-ups and the x-rays and the CTs and all that, like, and you start putting that big picture together. I think it takes what we have, really embedded in our brains already, and it just allows that to run wild. And that was such a cool feeling for me. And it kind of re-sparked the love that I have for medicine. And like you said, like you realize how much you don't know, and it's
yeah.
very humbling, but it's also exciting because every patient I have the opportunity to look something up. I mean, every patient,
Well,
and
even something as simple as like we do a lot of things acutely on the road, right? And we don't always consider, and it's not our job to consider this, but we don't always consider long-term effects. And
Mhm.
for example, the recent studies that have come out about stop giving morphine to ACS patients, because long-term effects are that they're having more problems with morphine versus, fentanyl or something like that.
Yep.
Or, we take a transfer of a patient that might be on a ventilator, whatever, they go from hospital to hospital, but we don't always realize that these patients have so many more problems 2 weeks into that ventilator stay, or 2 weeks on propofol, or those things that we don't understand until we see that. And on the road, even if we're taking a transfer on propofol, it might be a patient that was just intubated, they're transferring to a level 1 trauma center, so or the higher level of care. They're not going to have those long-term effects yet because they've only been on propofol for a couple hours. You have somebody who's been on propofol for weeks at a time, they're really, there's a lot of things that are going wrong, their kidneys and, all these other systems that are being affected by these medications and long-term effects. And it's just not something you'll experience out on the road at all.
Yes. Would you say that overall, though, working in the ER has changed the way that you practice medicine out in the field?
1000%. I'm able to educate my patient a little bit differently, and I'm able to see and um, kind of prepare for things that may be acutely happening, but they're step 3 in the acute process, and I can get ahead of it, or, the assessment, and I can start thinking about different things than the normal, like, oh, my belly hurts. And I'm like, okay, well, let me press on your belly, this and that. I can start really kind of deep diving the belly and being like, okay, is this kidneys? Is it liver? Is it spleen? Is it just a gas bubble? Is it this and that? Because I've had that experience and been alongside the doctors doing those assessments and following through with the blood work and all that kind of stuff. But I can also prepare my patient. I can be like, hey, this is what's going to most likely happen. Um, and this is what they're going to be looking for. And, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, I'm here to support you, but I'll give you the information that I can.
Yeah, I think definitely having that experience will change the way any EMS person provides their practice, because once you see it from the ER side, it really does open your eyes to that, little bit longer term, that subacute care, things like that, where it's not just that immediate hour, a few hours into it, and then, what's the game plan moving forward? Like all of that is now in the back of your head. So I think it definitely has a benefit all around. And I always tell anybody, like any experience you have will bring, more to the table and just
Mhm.
make you more well-rounded. So I think it's cool that you kinda did, like, the full circle thing there.
Yeah, I did that just, and it was a selfish reason, but it ended up being a really good. My goal has been flight forever, and that was something I didn't have on my resume. I'm like, I have no hospital experience other than school, so I just swallowed the humble pie and I took myself off the road for a little bit because I know how to be a road medic. You know, I've been doing it forever. I don't need to practice doing that while I'm in the hospital and stay on the road. So I really focused on hospital medicine for 2 years so that I could have that experience.
So you just mentioned that you wanted to get into flight medicine. Right now, what are you doing to prepare yourself or to, start taking those steps to achieve that goal?
Yeah, I study, study, study. um, funny enough, the other night, very, very good friend of mine. He's another medic of mine. He's been a partner of mine forever, and very good friend of mine. And we were on shift, and I would just kind of, a lot of times I go on shift and I curl up in a dark hole, and I've got my computer in front of me, and I'm looking up something or studying something because that's just what I enjoy doing. And he walks in, and he goes, "Hey, you doing big brain shit over there?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "How long have I known you, man?" And I was like, "I don't know, 10 years." And he goes, "As long as I've known you, you've always had your nose in a book." And I was like, "Well, okay, well, thanks, man." So I took it as a compliment, but he was giving me shit. But so there's a lot of studying and just learning is something that I really enjoy doing because I wasn't always good at learning. I wasn't always didn't always feel like the smartest guy on the planet, but just recently put my application in, got cover letters, all the recommendations and things like that. So I'm just in the beginning stages and you know just waiting on the process now.
So basically just study your ass off and then just play the game, man. That's cool. Yeah, hell yeah, I love it. All right, so I want to switch gears a little bit. And I we found each other on TikTok and all that lovely social media stuff, And one of the things that you are the leader of is the Medics After Dark Discord.
Hmm.
So I want to kind of dive into that. Like how did you come about creating this? What's the purpose? Like I have a lot of questions. So let's
Yeah.
start off with, how why did you create Medics After Dark?
Well, the real answer is that I wanted to be able to say whatever the hell I wanted without TikTok banning me.
Oh, we can appreciate that. We can appreciate that for
That's the
sure.
real answer, man. And there was about 7 or 8 of us that were on a live one night. And we're like, man, this sucks because we were having to say the K drug and this and that because ketamine is not, you're not allowed to say ketamine. You're not allowed to say fentanyl, even though we were talking about it in a medical term. And so it was a live we were doing one night and we were just talking shop. Right. And then all of a sudden TikTok is going nutso because we're talking shop and it's things that are not approved by TikTok. So I was like, you know what? I, Discord is a place, right? So it became Medics After Dark, and it was just a hangout, right? And then as it has progressed, I was like, you know what? I have had this idea of this community for a long time, so why don't I just step hard into this specifically? Because I pulled the trigger on making the Discord and kind of this place where we can fellowship as providers without worrying about all that kind of stuff. And um, so I just decided like I'm going to step hard into this, and I did, and it blew up overnight. Like holy cow! It's like everybody's been looking for this, and it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Yeah, and I think that I actually found you guys doing one of those live sessions on TikTok. Very either right after maybe that initial warning thing all happened because when I was sitting there listening in one night and I couldn't join in at the moment, but I was listening in and you had mentioned to a few people that slipped up and you're like, hey, don't say that, don't
Hmm.
say that, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, that's interesting. Just
Hmm.
learning TikTok myself, and so I think that's funny. I think that's right around the first time I actually saw you and you hosting like kind of a round table, round
Yeah.
robin type of thing. And then all of a sudden it was like the Medics After Dark stuff. And then that's when you and I started talking.
Hmm.
So for those of you that are listening and that don't know, what exactly is Medics After Dark? Like you kind of touched a little bit on why you started it. What exactly is Medics After Dark?
Yeah, so it is a community, and we'll call it that for now, of providers, nurses, flight medics, medics, EMTs, EMT, BA, whatever it is in your state, firefighters. We have students in there, EMT students, paramedic students, things like that, and we just wanted to provide a place where we can be humans and be ourselves, right? And be able to, like I said, fellowship with other providers and people that just get it, right? And they are on the grind like we are. And I've made some incredible friends, but our job is less than desirable to talk about with people that don't do our job. And some of the horrific and heartbreaking things that we've seen, and we just bundle that all up, and we're like, well, I don't really want to tell anybody about this, you know, person's child that died, or this guy that was torn in half by a car accident or something like that. These horrific things that we see all the time. And part of me also stepping hard into the mental health of EMS, and our job was to provide that outlet for them. So it's somewhere where people that just get it, right? I can talk about these calls with people that aren't going to shy away from it, that aren't going to be scared of it. They're not going to be, they're not going to think of me as less of a person because I've seen or done or whatever. So that's part one. Part two is networking for content creators. Come in, there's a lot of content creators in there. We've got some bigger name ones in there. So just networking for that, and we all kind of try to support each other in our channels and in content and all that kind of stuff. And then educational as well. I have. Everybody I think is like, I have a passion for education. And I'm like, well, then do it the right way. Like stop being toxic about educating people. So I was actually just talking to a friend about this last night. My style of education is more of a coach versus a read off a slide and just spit out the information that's already in front of their face. So I have a very I don't know how to say it. The style of education is important to me. It doesn't make any sense for me to read what's already in their face to them, right? They're grown adults. So being able to coach somebody and coach them through working it out in their own mind is one of the most thrilling feelings that I can get. And watching a student or watching somebody I'm helped just get it and they click it and they work it out themselves. And I'm like, dude, you did it. Like you worked that out. It wasn't me. I asked you a few prompting questions, but you got it, man. So that's been fun. And there's been some really, holy cow, some intelligent people that have come in this Discord and have just stood up and said, yeah, I'll provide some information. I'll help the next generation out. And that's been so cool. And we have a kind of a saying, and that the only thing that I'm ever going to charge anybody for any education they receive in here is their willingness to learn. That's it. It's always going to be free of charge to everybody. And we just do study sessions, or we do kind of, what do I call it? They're not CUs, they're not, but some of the big brains will come in and they'll teach stuff. So on the 4th, we have the leaders in the ECMO and out of hospital ECPR stuff coming in to do, just talk to us about it and give us the, education piece on that. So that'll be really neat. The medics are doing cardiology probably once or twice a week with some of the medic students. And tonight I'm doing a review of the trauma assessment for our EMT students because they're all getting ready to test. And so it's been a really cool journey, and just connecting people and then being like, man, I did this. I'm nobody, but here we are. And I've connected so many people. So it's been really cool experience so far.
That's awesome. So if you're a student trying to learn stuff, this is definitely a great spot for you to jump in. If you're already in it, this is another great spot. You can talk about your mental health and maybe different calls, things like that. And it doesn't always have to be mental health, just sharing different stories, experiences, and again, obviously keeping HIPAA compliance and all
Sure.
that
Yep.
stuff. I imagine you guys are very focused on that
Absolutely.
stuff. Now let me ask, do you guys do video lessons and things like that? Is that how this works? Or is it,
yeah.
how does that all play out?
So the kind of the process is let's say, John, you're like, man, I really want to learn something about whatever, heart blocks, and we can take all these big topics and bite them off in small chunks, so hey, I'm really struggling with heart blocks is one that we just recently did. So they'll submit a ticket and say, hey, I really, really struggling with heart blocks. Can some of the paramedics come and help? And so then the moderation team, they kind of coordinate everything, and they get a paramedic lined up to help with that. And then they send it over to another person who does all the scheduling, the scheduling part of it. And then they put it on the calendar, and then you can see it on the calendar and either come or don't come. It's not a big deal, right? Nobody's required to be there. And then the night of, or the time frame of, we all go into a channel and cameras start flipping on. Everybody flips their cameras on, and then usually the presenter will either put something up on the screen, or they'll just talk like you and I are, and we'll talk about heart blocks for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. And usually at the end of it, we're just like, who's got questions about anything? Because you got all the paramedics here, and you got some of the CCPs and the flight medics here, and all that kind of stuff. So ask your questions. So we always, at the end of every session, we always kind of leave it open. And that also helps us kind of think about where everybody else's mind is at. Is there something that we need to try to push or would be helpful to people, So.
I love sitting in a room when I'm surrounded by people that are just smarter than me, and it's
Dude,
not
it's
hard to
amazing.
achieve it.
Yeah,
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 it's
it's
not hard to
amazing.
achieve, but when I can just sit there and just be like lurking and fly on the wall and be like, oh man, like you just have the opportunity to really learn some good stuff. And
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to ask the questions too. Like there's no stupid question, right? Like you can ask the same repetitive question and then it becomes stupid. But if it's the first time and you don't know something, it's okay to ask. Like you're never gonna learn otherwise. So when you
Yeah.
have those opportunities, take full advantage and jump on, you
Drive
know?
that. I drive that culture in the Discord too. And we kind of back to where we started at with we're not going to eat our young. I drive the culture of, if you're going to be here and want to provide the information, provide it in a respectful and helpful way.
Mhm.
I don't need to hear you tell war stories. I've got my own war stories. I've heard every
Right.
war story on the planet.
Amen to
I'm
that.
like, I don't need to
Amen to
hear
that,
that.
bro. Amen. Yeah.
So if you're going
Yeah.
to come and you're going to help these people out that are coming to you and saying, I need help, then do it in a respectful way. And the minute that starts to kind of derail, either I'll step in and say, hey, let's get back to going. And I don't have that very often. It doesn't happen often in the Discord, but it's just, we also kind of preach the culture of like, just ask your questions, man. The reason we're here is because we have knowledge that we want to give to you. And I don't always know what you need unless you say something, so don't be embarrassed. You're not going to be laughed at or judged or anything like that. I mean, we have people all the time asking questions where, 10 years ago, they're like, you don't know that? Like, what the heck? And it's like, who cares if you don't know that? Just ask the question. And like, I don't care if you don't know it. We're going to work you through it, you know?
Right. And the other thing that I really like about this whole Discord thing is, there's generally somebody on this server at like 24/7. So,
24/7. Yeah.
there's almost somebody always there to talk to if
Hmm.
nothing else, and maybe fire some questions off to, or just kind of shoot the shit with, whatever it may be. There's always somebody there. It doesn't
Well,
matter at what time I'm looking. Like
there have definitely been some just knockdown, drag out belly laughing times on there that I've had. And like just some of the people and just the different personalities and what they say and do. So yeah, there's somebody generally around 24/7. And if it's just that you want to get on and you want to have a beer and you're like, I just need a fucking laugh about something today, it's gonna happen. And I mean, we are crying laughing at each other sometimes, and it's a good time.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Now, I do know you guys have a bigger guest coming up. Did you want to talk about that? Did you kind of want to plug that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So on November 2nd at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time, Patrick Pianezza, he's the co-writer of Code 3, which was the movie that was made for paramedics. So that's super cool. He's going to come in and he's going to talk to us. We're just now, that's been most of my work lately with Medics After Dark, is just organizing that and getting all the stuff together and making sure that the moderators are set up to help moderate that stuff. But I'm super excited. I got to talk to him on the phone. Earlier last week, I talked to Patrick a little bit, just, hey, like, what are your expectations? What are some things we need to stay away from, just so I can respect his time and everything. He's super cool guy, super down to earth, and he's just one of us, right? He's just a
Right.
medic. He's just one of us, and he helped write this thing. So, come to find out that every single scene, call, and story in that movie was a call that he had been on. So that was super cool to me to like, these are real life things. They're not just Hollywood calls, right? These are all things that Patrick has been on in his career. So that was kind of neat. So yeah, the second we're gonna kind of load it up and let everybody, have at it. And that movie was made by us and for us, right? So it's something that we're all really proud of, I think, in our own way, and really, really thankful to Patrick and his team and the people. I was listening to what is it, Medic 2020, or is that what it is? The podcast. I don't remember what it is. Something 2020. It's a big one, and I feel kind of bad about saying that. But they had Rainn Wilson on, and he was talking. He was talking about how cool it was, and to make that video, and how much he wanted to make it for us, and he didn't care about anybody else's opinion. He said, "I want the medics and the people that are out on the front line to be proud of what I did," and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hopefully be able to join in on that and listen to you guys. And I've listened to a few interviews with Patrick, and I think he did a remarkable job, really
Hmm.
explaining and selling what really being a paramedic is all about.
Dude, there
I
were
thought
so
that
many little
movie.
like
There's so many,
nuances.
so
Yeah.
many, and I sat there and watched it with my wife, and I told her I would, I would keep it in, I would keep it reined in, no pun intended, and it was so hard. I'm like, oh, that's a real thing, and it was
Yeah.
it was really cool to watch that movie,
Well,
and I think they did a phenomenal job with that.
yeah, there were. I mean, there's obviously the big macro things that happen, and everybody's kind of giggling about it. The
Yeah,
nursing home thing. Oh my gosh, I lost my shit on that one. But
yeah,
the
yeah.
little things were really well done. When he was going off the rails and fuck this and fuck that, and the one fuck that he gave that I connected with was when he threw all the paperwork out the window and he was like, "Fuck the charting," and I was like, "Yes, like this job would be so much better without that." And like
Yes,
that's
sir.
what burnout is right there, and right down to the time, when he was signing the papers to get out, and his boss is like, "Don't leave like a bitch, don't do that." And I'm like, she's guilting him because his ass isn't in the seat of the ambulance. You know what I mean? So those little nuanced things that you just don't know unless you've done it, they were on the mark, and it was incredible to watch.
Yeah, and I won't give away too much of it by any means because it's a
Sure,
great
sure, sure.
movie, and I strongly recommend you all
Hmm.
go out and see it. One of the cool things about it is the plot line of what he's trying to accomplish, and ends up. We'll kind of leave it there because again, I don't want to give too much away. I felt that very similar feeling. I did a lot of that same stuff, and then I found myself in a similar position. And I'll leave it just like that to let
Hmm.
the movie, soak up a little bit and let some time pass before we really dive directly into it. If you've seen it, you can probably put it together what I'm saying. But no, I think that's really cool. I'm really excited for you guys to be able to have that opportunity to sit down with Patrick. I think it was EMS 2020. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
2020.
name.
Yep, 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 yep.
Yeah, and to sit down with Rainn Wilson, I mean, that guy is just a genius. He's an excellent actor, and I thought he did a remarkable job,
Yeah.
portraying a burnt out paramedic. Like I said, they did a great job. So that's November 2nd, PST time, right? Pacific
10:30
Standard
Pacific
Time,
Standard. Yeah.
10:30 Standard Time. So that'll
12:30,
be what,
1:30 Central, and
1:30
yeah.
Eastern?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
that's where I mean, I'm out of New Hampshire, so I gotta convert things. So
Ah, you
1:30
New
Eastern
Englanders.
Standard Time. Yeah, yeah, go
Yeah,
Patriots.
yeah.
Uh,
Listen, man, I'm a Colts fan, so I don't know if we can do any more of this.
Yeah, yeah, we'll just end it right here, right now. No,
Yeah.
so again, let's just recap that was November 2nd, 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, 10:30 Pacific Standard Time on November 2nd, on Medics After Dark. That's the Discord. Definitely check that stuff out. And like I said, they're doing some really good work over there. I'm excited. I am a member as well. I kind of lurk a little bit. I want to get a little bit more involved with you guys, but I think because, like I said, I think you guys are doing some really good stuff. But Justin, I want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for being here with me today. I have one final question for you, man. If you could go back with all of your experience, take it all in, and you're just starting out in your EMS career, what would you tell yourself?
What would I tell myself? Hang in there. It's not easy, but um, it's not easy, but it's so worth it. And you got to hang in there and get past that kind of 6 to 8 year hump to understand how worth it this job is. Through all the good calls, the bad calls, the hard nights, the good times, like all that stuff, it's really a fulfilling job, and something I'll retire from. And this is coming from a guy that's probably it's been around the world, been to war, all that kind of stuff, and this scratches whatever itch I have left as far as that goes. But um, if young me wasn't interested in medicine, I would just say hang in there, man. Like it's a fun journey, and the people that you meet, the connections that you make, it's been incredible.
I think that's great advice. Just hang in there, kind of grind it out, and
Hmm.
the journey in itself is exactly that. It is a journey. It's not a short game. It's a long-term commitment. You're consistently evolving, learning, meeting new people. You'll have ups and downs, all of the above. It's a wild ride, but just
Hmm.
remember it is a very small community, friends. So like
Yeah.
just keep that in the back of your head,
Yeah.
and I like that. Just hang in there. So, Justin, I really appreciate it. Lastly, if what is there anything else that you wanted to promote? We have the Medics After Dark Discord. I know you're on TikTok as Nightmare Medic.
Hmm.
What else do you have going?
Yeah, so the Discord, if you go to my TikTok, Nightmare Medic, it's in the bio there. Other than that, End of Shift Apparel is who we partner with right now for all of our stuff. This is one of his one of his shirts here. And then we have some Medics After Dark merch there too that you can buy, and every bit of that goes back into the community at Medics After Dark. So we've kind of recently discussed how we're going to use money and things like that, any kind of funds that we get from the merch sales. And what we've come up with initially is we have a group of students that are, the December, January graduating class, and they're going to be testing and things like that. So we've decided that we're going to put together some, welcome to our world type of baskets, the things that will help them getting out into their career and things like that. So, and as they graduate, they get their licensing, things like that. We're going to say, like, you did it, man. And here's just a small token of our appreciation, but, know that we need you, and we're proud of you, especially the ones that have been here kind of since the beginning and kind of studying with us and things like that. So anything you buy on there that's Medics After Dark branded, will go back to the students, things like that. And we're going to do some other stuff later on, but that's just our initial thought with the money.
Awesome, man. Well, again, I really appreciate it. So we have End of Shift Apparel, Nightmare Medic on TikTok, and of course the Medics After Dark Discord. So again, man, I appreciate you coming on here. I had a great time talking with you, and I
Yeah,
hope
man.
you have a great day.
Yeah, brother.
All right, we'll talk later, Justin.
Yep.